Hey there, internets. Field trip to the shed today. Mostly prompted, we're out at the shed, and I'm not doing this at night because I wanted to do it while it was fresh in my mind, and my wife is watching some stuff inside. And I got a fire pit over here, which is convenient. And we got a burn ban in Skagit County as of the last U.S. drought monitor. We are in what they call exceptional or extreme drought, I believe it is. Second worst condition. And this was prompted by a friend sharing a video and said evidence of a directed energy weapon in regarding the Maui fires. And it didn't take much more than a little bit of Google searching to say this is crap. Now the video, my editing skills suck, but the video shows these two cars on a lot, and it's like the one lot was burned, and you do see damage to the trees on the edge of this lot. And it does end at one lot, but if it was a directed energy weapon starting a fire and then leaving, I'm sorry, but that fire would have spread to the other lot. So somebody put it out, wind took it only one direction. You can see where it ran up to a concrete block wall and didn't continue any further. So I Google searched first, melting point of aluminum, because you see molten aluminum. Aluminum melts at about 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. Google searched what is the melting point of steel, because they're saying how could this possibly have gotten so hot. And then, of course, we want to get a comparison. Steel melts anywhere from 2200 degrees Fahrenheit to 2500 degrees Fahrenheit. So obviously what melts aluminum don't melt steel. My background going and getting a welding degree, I could tell you that right off the bat, but I wanted to have the numbers. Cast iron conveniently is about 2200 degrees. So your cast iron skillet, it's going to survive a lot of fires. Now, and you see a lot of stuff, maybe it's warped, twisted after it's been in a fire, because stuff will get hot, stuff will warp as it gets hot. So then I Googled what temperature does a grass fire burn at? Or excuse me, I did a car fire, 1500 degrees. And absolutely, a car can start on fire and stay on fire for an extended period if nobody comes and puts it out. In the engine compartment, we had a motorhome catch on fire here in Skagit County in a parking lot, and it looked like in the engine compartment. The fire department got there ahead of time, though. And yes, you can catch a car on tire. Now, tires start burning at about 750 degrees, which you'd say, well, that's not hot enough. But a tire fire can, of course, get hotter than that. And you get the whole car burning. You're going to have radiant heat. And a car can start on fire from a grass fire. So it's entirely possible a wind-blown ember started a lot on fire. Maybe one of the neighbors took his hose and stopped it from getting any closer to his house. Got up against a concrete wall on one side, got up against a concrete sidewalk on another side, and couldn't get enough up to burn the rest of the trees. And this goes into a thing of some of the things that go with the Maui fires. The Maui electrical utility, whose name escapes me, and this is what you can get with just a few minutes of Google searching. They were basically forced to put, with the limited amount they were able to get out of customers for doing this, the Hawaiian government is pushing them to be all renewable. And they weren't putting money into maintenance of their electrical system, but they're also not putting money into managing their terrain. And this goes back to that thing of graze it, log it, or watch it burn. I think it's actually log it, graze it, or watch it burn. And it's absolutely true. You know, I had somebody question me on that. And he said, oh no, because fire is important for certain trees to be able to reproduce, because their seeds only come out, and then you gotta put the nutrients back in the soil. Well, that worked 200 years ago in North America, and then we came through and logged it. That's done. It's water under the bridge. You're not going back. And I asked a forester which was right, because there are trees that only open up their seed cones when they get hot enough from a fire happening below. And what she told me, and she was a DNR forester, so she's not working for Sierra Pacific, and now she's left DNR and is trying to work as a CDL driver, but that's beside the point. This was when she was still working for DNR, Department of Natural Resources, here in Washington, is that in places like the east of the Cascade Mountains, trees were farther apart, definitely farther apart, and they were on the west coast. On the west of the mountains, fire was not an actor in the environment, so saying graze it, log it, or watch it burn is absolutely true. Because you'd have trees and then you just have a meadow. Trees, then a meadow. Fire isn't an actor in the ecosystem naturally. On the east side, it was an actor, but the trees were farther apart, they were bigger, and fires came through every few years. You didn't have somebody fighting the fires. If you did have animals get too populated, the non-predators, your herbivores, they would eat stuff down, but the fires only burned like 3 foot high, singed the bark, and yes, it put nutrients back in the soil, and the heat opened up the seed cones. Now what you get is you get smaller trees closer together, and you get a buildup of brush underneath. So then when that fire does come, the whole thing goes up, it catches the whole tree on fire. It burns so hot, it will burn up the, it sterilizes the soil, and it takes that much longer to come back. The guy was questioning, look how fast this grew back. We had a brush fire along I-5, and I just drove past it when it had first started, right before the fire department got there, and just through the window of the truck, you could feel that heat. And I'm clear over in the lane. I've got the shoulder between part of the lane between my truck and the fire, because the fire was right up against the pavement at that point. That's a hot fire. So yes, a brush fire can get that hot. A car fire can get that hot. It's not evidence of a conspiracy. But the management of your wild areas or of your rural areas is important, and is something that Hawaii and a lot of Democratic-run states in particular have ignored. So you want to have criticism? Absolutely. Yeah, there is absolutely criticism of the left, especially the environmental left, and it's a legitimate criticism. It's also a legitimate criticism to say, why did they not just get the power turned off and get people out of Lahaina? People burned in their cars, they died from the heat, being too close to the heat, even jumping over the wall. Some police officers sitting there saying, nope, my orders are to turn anyone around, you can't come through. And the fire was getting closer and closer and closer. I saw an interview with a guy talking about how he was on foot, so he went anyway, and people that drove around the barricades and ignored the cop, they got out. So there's a few hundred counts of murder as far as I'm concerned. You know, if YouTube doesn't like that word, they need to be leveled at that police officer and whoever told him not to let anyone through. So you want to criticize what's going on in Maui, absolutely. But you don't need to be worrying about a directed energy weapon. And why would you direct an energy weapon? Well, at a civilian population, or if you're the idea that, oh, they want to create a smart city, Lahaina was already going that way. Ideologically, that's a place where you can get people to comply and embrace that idea. The kind of place you would want to aim something like that is, unfortunately, where I live in Clear Lake, which votes very Republican, and people say, no, we're not giving up our small town, and we're not giving up being able to be independent of all that crap. So anyway, no, it wasn't a directed energy weapon. What some people are pointing to in that form as evidence is not that. There's a lot to criticize, but that's not one of them. Until then, like, share, subscribe, because even when you got to be factually correct to be morally right, and we have to be willing to say, no, you're wrong, even if it's on the right, because there are people who will go look for the directed energy weapon instead of directing their rage at the right target. Direct your rage at the people that say, no, you shouldn't log it, graze it, or watch it burn. If that just means that Hawaii needs to say, hey, maybe we should bring in some goats and sheep to eat that underbrush down and send them to market every year, that should be just fine. They use goats as fire control effectively in green areas, not just politically, communistic areas, but in places that actually have a lot of trees and underbrush that you want to control that underbrush in some manner. That is an effective way to do so. So until then, you all take care.